Pleased, on behalf of Stroud Civic Society, nominates the award to the Town Council, and so far the Town Council have never turned us down. And this year it was for the High Street repaving, which was done in 2 phases and has now been completed. This is, of course, not a view of the High Street either before or after. It is a view of the Imperial Hotel, but it's actually only there for the little roundabout in the left-hand corner. Because at the last moment we reconsidered and wondered whether we should give the award not to the roundabout, but to the roundabout's removal, which was one of the major improvements in the last 20 years in Stroud. That's another view of the roundabout. It's already been shunted off its plinth. And spoiler alert, that is an early thoughts by Glenn Howells of what to do with the Imperial House for ecotricity, as opposed to the ghastly Lego block plan which has been abolished. So those are only early thoughts. That's not part of the planning permission, hasn't been put in the planning permission, but that's one of the ideas that came forward, which we, both Stroud Civic Society and the Town Council, the people who attended the meeting, thought was a vast improvement on what's proposed. Anyway, that's what it looks like now. So suddenly the nude, bare, spare place. Now, ironically, the roundabout, actually some years ago, it's basically 2 concrete sewage pipes. That's one. The top one originally, when it was 2 stories high, it was actually whitewashed, and at one point somebody put a rather nice graffiti around it. Artists called Knight, spelled with a K, and it was like a carousel going the wrong way around. And we actually gave that the Town Design Award one year, and it's the only time the Town Design Award has made the Times. And that's largely because I suggested that if the artist or artists were present, they should not accept the award because they might be done for criminal damage. That's the story that made the Times. Anyway, the top long ago got knocked off, and finally it was shunted so badly off its plinth and cracked, it was removed, and, sorry, wrong way, and it's a vastly improved space. But we decided, no, that's in fact almost an accident. I believe it's Network Rail who actually are in charge of the station forecourt. But this ridiculous thing that got in the way of traffic, prevented lorries going down and making deliveries, and was ugly. I mean, the idea that just because you put plants in it, it makes 2 concrete sewage pipes, one on top of the other, into a flower pot, is endemic of the sort of hanging basket school of planters. And I do have a certain obsession with planters in Stroud, as you will see. The High Street paving before. This was a pretty dismal scene. These shots go basically in ascending order from the bottom of the High Street. You probably remember this. This is from a few years ago. The main thing you notice, which unfortunately has not really been changed, is the sheer volume of traffic parked and scattered around the vans that are parked there in this so-called pedestrian zone, with delivery hours which nobody pays attention to. But if you look down, you can see there are basically 3 different surfaces. On the left-hand side are bricks running sideways, which are the pavement. Then there are concrete cobbles. These are all concrete materials. Concrete cobbles in a sort of mock gutter. And then they look like square bricks. They're not. They're actually rectangular bricks, concrete again, but they've had a slot put in the middle of them, so they look like square bricks. So 3 different surfaces. And this wandered all the way up the High Street. It was quite a rough surface for people with buggies, for people with movement problems. The street furniture is also particularly inelegant, standing up on legs because it's been put down on sideways. And also the surface over the years had started to subside. It had basically started to move up and down. That's right at the top where you can see the Berlin Wall, one of the major sites of Stroud. Shame we can't demolish that like they did with the other one. And you can see again this wandering pattern of all these different materials wandering around. All concrete, all different, very fussy, very uncomfortable, not visually very satisfactory. And that's looking down. One thing you'll notice is that there is a section in the middle that's actually been repaired. And the bit that's been repaired has been repaired with different materials. They've used bricks more like the ones on the side to run across. And that's always the problem with surfaces like this. But just not to be too dismal, that's what it looks like on a busy day in Stroud. There's a phrase that Andrew Watton used to me many years ago. He said, when I take prospective investors around on the farmers' market Saturday, and it's full of sunlight and full of people, people say, what a wonderful buzzing town, I really want to invest here. When I take them around on a wet Wednesday, it looks awful. Well, that in a sense is a sort of farmers' market Saturday, and you don't notice the fact that the paving surfaces aren't particularly good, but when the street is empty, you do notice it. The High Street paving after, again, start at the bottom, and with a reminder that's what it used to look like. This is the completed scheme. It's nice the way it actually joins rather neatly with the King Street scheme on the right, which was completed some years ago. And these are shots progressively going up the street. Once again, vehicles are already stopping, vehicles are already parked, half on the pavement, half off. But you'll notice how smooth the surfaces are, how flush, and how nice, in fact, a lot of the detailing is. The York stone paving on the right-hand side is sawn, so it's completely smooth. Then there's a granite curb laid flush with this rather special tarmac, which is almost like a sort of glued tarmac in the middle, in this colour, which is somewhat controversial. Looking at the top, that's a sort of evening view. There's one of those planters on the left-hand side. Maybe you like it. I can't stand them. I think we should all get rid of it. There you go. There's a very nice view coming from Bedford Street, looking out onto the High Street. Again, very nice York stone pavement. So the simplicity, the use of a limited palette of materials, the smoothness and the quality of the lay. Again, we hope it will actually last. Again, looking downhill, there's that wretched plant on the right-hand side. Looking downhill, that's on an empty day, but Stroud always looks good from the top of the High Street. But again, this is on a full day, this is a farmer's market type day, and again, you actually don't notice the surface. The main thing you notice is the surface does make a difference, but now the street is actually full of people, which is the farmer's market Saturday again. But the surface is also very good. One of the things I've noticed now is the number of people who skateboard now down the street. It's now become a very good skateboarding surface. High Street paving, there has been a certain amount of criticism. Most of the criticism is actually based around the disruption during the works, loss of trade, things like that, which are almost unavoidable. The same thing happened when the new bridge was built. So obviously there was a problem, and many traders actually have suffered from it being there. But there are two other criticisms. One of which is the colour, and the other which is more my concern, which is some oddities in the detailing. But firstly, on the colour. This is a Facebook page which has 58 members, and it's called Stroudies Against the Poo-Coloured High Street. And you'll notice, since this is my Facebook page, just to show that I'm being neutral, I have not actually joined this thing, but it says, you may be able to read on the right-hand side, we are a peace-loving people, but who knows what terrible things might happen in a town with a poo-coloured high street. Join and save Stroud from imminent anarchy. 58 members, so you can find that on Facebook. One of the remarks in there, somebody describes it, and this again shows how controversial the colour is. I actually didn't think it was poo colour, but somebody does. One person described it as one long skid mark. So most of the criticism has been based on the colour. I have reservations about the colour. I still think black is the best for the carriageway, because if you're doing a traditional road, the left-hand side basically, you get your York stone paving, you get your curb, then you get your perhaps some cobbles in the gutter, this is the traditional carriageway. Then you get your black tarmac carriageway, cobbles again, curb, York stone paving. So that's one of my criticisms, as well as the problems to replace it. But my complaint is I don't understand the way the granite curb has been organised. If you look on the left-hand side, it runs smoothly up the street, the way you'd expect a curb to be. This is all flush, but it's pretending to be a traditional carriageway as though the curb was raised. But on the right-hand side, you suddenly find that there's a little sort of sticky out bit at the bottom. So if it was a real curb and you were driving along, you hit it with a car, you'd be mounting the pavement and you might actually have a puncture. And then suddenly it steps back. Now, I can see that the benches, one of the problems of the scheme is that the street furniture has not been removed. On the other hand, I can't actually see why a smooth line couldn't have been presented to go up the street. I don't think you can do a virtual curb, a flush curb, without it actually complying with all the rules of how a curb works. I've heard various explanations about the fact that all the way it steps back and forward is about the building line. It's absolutely not true. I've been around and examined it. It does not step backwards and forwards according to the building line. If we look down Kendrick Street, so look at the High Street Kendrick Street, which has not been resurfaced yet, you'll see what I think is the source of the problem. The old scheme of cobbles, these concrete cobbles, you will see if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see the way it zigzags to the side to fit where the drainage gully is over the original gutter. And it zigzagged a second time, and I think they followed the existing arrangement of the previous system. And in fact, behind the bench, you can see yet more zigzags. Now, these are less obvious because this isn't pretending to be a flush virtual curve. So whether you like the design or not, the zigzagging doesn't matter. I think it does matter if you're putting in a curb and saying, this is a traditional carriageway. This is again, stepping back, looking from the High Street down Kendrick Street. Now, if it was a real curve on the right-hand side, you'd expect it to go in a radius turn round into the street. In fact, almost exactly where the tracks of the vehicle show them going. Instead of which, it does this odd zigzag setback. Again, I can see no sense to it. Again, that's got nothing to do with the building line there. You will notice also that one problem with the material is look at the way that the rubber of car tyres stains the material. But if we go to the other side of Kendrick Street, you can see where the old curb is, and you can see effectively what's happened is that the new curb, where it joins up, mimics the line of the old curb. And I think the problem is too much of the old rules of the old cobbled system have been applied to the new curbing system, perhaps because of where the drainage gullies are, in a way that actually makes no sense with a flush curb carriageway. And this brings me to the final point of this picture. You will notice in the foreground, already the replacement, the repair has taken place, and guess what? They've used black tarmac. It's very, very hard if you do these things to get it. You put in an expensive material, it's very difficult. If some contractors come along to work with the water board, they only have black tarmac. That's what they're going to use. It's no good saying they must reinstate as original. They never do. So unfortunately, that's just the one place that's happened so far, but obviously more may be to come. Now, I've spent 2 years on the steering committee of the Public Realm Strategy, which produced its report in 2008. And we commissioned New Master Planning and Hamilton Bailey Associates. And it's a very elaborate report. You can still find it to download. This is a physical copy, which is now gathering dust in the library shelves in the District Council. But that had a comprehensive strategy of the town centre. Now, what they proposed for the High Street was not what has been executed. On the other hand, what has been executed is, in a sense, almost an emergency measure to try and fix the dreadful walking problems on the High Street. But the Public Realm Strategy, this is going away from the High Street, looked at all the traffic and environmental problems of the town. And this is basically King Street, showing both the traffic, but also the number of posts, signs, yellow lines. This is George Street, again, posts, signs, yellow lines, a very degraded environment. Well, the High Street is a vast improvement, but the automobile environment parts of town are very poor. This is the original King Street, which, in a sense, I think the High Street has copied for the beige coloured paving. And if you look at the way this is toned down, this is not as good as the High Street, because if you look at the York stone paving on the side, it's actually been rough cut. It's been done in a rustic cut, which is not half as nice. But I think that's why they've tried to use that brown, that beige coloured tarmac in order to try and blend in with this. But there are so many different surfacing materials used in Stroud. This is Union Street, part of the whole Cornhill development, and where basically the private developers there went for a sort of scalextric scheme where they've got tarmac in the middle and then they've got red bricks on the side, and the red bricks are now beginning to come loose. But again, looking down that street the other way on a farmer's market day, you don't notice, you just see the quality of the life, and it's important to remember that street surfaces at their best should be like a comfortable pair of shoes that you don't notice when you're wearing them. But the problem is a lot of Stroud, the quality of the surfaces is so poor you do notice it all the time. Again, that's the pedestrian part right at the upper end coming up to the High Street. That's where the red brick materials are. And again, on a busy day with the views out, it doesn't matter. But if you walk around the town when there aren't people around and you notice the surfaces, you see just how poor they are. Now, there are two schemes, and I've just chosen schemes from Gloucestershire to show what can be done in terms of reorganising the way we look at streets. And these, therefore, are both done under the aegis of Gloucestershire County Council, just like the Stroud scheme. On the other hand, there are much more substantial funding available for these. The Gloucester Linkages Project is an attempt to join Gloucester Quays to the town centre, the city centre, so as to get some of the benefits of the Gloucester Quays trade filtering in so people walk in from Gloucester Quays into the centre, so as to make an easy route in. Now that's Gloucester Quays, and also shows you the quality of the streetscape there. So that's Fantley Road, it's a public road running in front of the Gloucester Quays development behind. And all those are cut granite sets, so it's an incredibly expensive, smooth surface. All the street furniture is new, all the bicycle racks, everything. So you can see a lot more money has been spent, but then Gloucester Quays has a lot more money to spend. So everything back there, the benches, everything is new. That's not the case on the High Street in Stroud. The budget wasn't available for that. And then from there you cross down into the docks, where as well as repaving the path which we're walking on at the moment, and creating new benches on the right-hand side and yet another path, they've also put a sculptural high point. This is called the Candle, and it's dedicated to Ivor Gurney, and it's made of core 10, which is that rather charming steel that rusts until it stops rusting. So it's always this brown rust thing. And if we go up to the right and then look back down on it, it's been used as a marker to try and steer you on the path that takes you into the centre of town. And it takes you into Southgate Street, so looking down Southgate Street, and again, the lack of signs, the lack of any paint on the roads, the lack of any yellow lines. So that's looking back down Southgate Street on the viewport, back towards the docks as part of the Lincolnshire scheme. So a very expensive scheme, but the principles of it, which is remove all the clutter, don't use lines, use a simple palette of high quality materials, is something everyone can pay attention to. And that is the other part of what's known, I think, as the Kimball's Triangle, which is where the traffic used to go up the left into Southgate Street, because that again was a gyratory like we have in Stroud. Now all the traffic goes to the right on the shared space. So traffic that's seeking admission to the left. Again, there's not a single yellow line, there's not a single post, there's not a single sign. So everything that's been, and again, high quality materials, Yorkstone paving, a curb, tarmac. They've gone for a slightly sort of beige tarmac, so it's quite fashionable at the moment. The final scheme, don't know if you, Cirencester first completed a gateway project about 10 years ago, and finally has finished it up with the marketplace recently. Now that's a reminder of what the street approaches to Stroud look like. And this is what the street has that's George Street. This is what the approach to Cirencester looks like. When you come off the main road, which has now been directed around to the right, it's as if you come in, turn left at Waitrose, and then come round. You're then offered this gateway to the left, and you can even see those 4 granite bollards which mark the entrance to the town. And this is a restricted core area. So basically, there's a sign outside saying these are the rules. There are no yellow lines, but you can only park where it says you can. So there are no things telling what you can't do. There are only things telling what you can do. And if we go around to the left and look back, that's what the street looks like there. Again, high quality materials. I think there's 1 post on the right-hand side. The cars on the left are not parked on the pavement, they're actually parked in parking bays. And again, no yellow lines, no signage, everything as simple and stripped back as possible. And you walk around it, and obviously it shows off the architecture splendidly. You walk around it and just see what can be achieved. And that's the marketplace. The project, about a year ago, finally finished in the marketplace, where again, an enormous amount of high quality materials have been placed, bollards, but cars are still parking there, the market is still there. There's no attempt to interrupt the functionality of Stroud Town Centre, but everything has just been upgraded, but in this very understated, elegant way. A lot of money spent, expensive materials. I think a lot of money came from Cirencester Town Council, as well as the district, and other of these sort of funding package things. Now, I'm not comparing the High Street against this, because the High Street is working with a very different budget. But I'm saying after the High Street, we really need to look at a lot of the other streets in town, because Stroud is in competition with towns like Gloucester and towns like Cirencester, and both of those have substantially upped their game. But the High Street repaving project is a substantial achievement, and while there are maybe quarrels about the colour and maybe quarrels about some of the detailing, it's a vast improvement of what was there, and a vast improvement to the centre of Stroud. So congratulations to everyone who was involved in completing the scheme and funding it. Thank you.
I think it would only be fair to mention that the High Street paving scheme was funded jointly by the County Council, District Council and the Town Council. And well done again, Dan and your team. You got special praise for the sensitive way in which you worked with both the public and the shopkeepers to keep shops open. Although they may have suffered some diminution of trade, the way that access was kept open all the way through and people were able to walk around, and there weren't great barriers of health and safety to stop people getting anywhere near the places they wanted to go to, was much appreciated. So, thank you very much.